Alright, let me just put it out there. Freddy vs. Jason is pure chaos of the best possible kind. Not just the movie itself, which is a beautiful train wreck of claws, machetes, and questionable teen decisions, but everything around it as well. As bonkers as the on-screen carnage was, the behind-the-scenes story, even crazier. We're talking script rewrites that went completely off the rails, the alternate endings, last-minute changes, the ridiculous concepts that were pitched and almost made it in. It's a miracle this movie even exists, because some of those ideas, completely unhinged. Freddy vs. Jason went through hell before Freddy and Jason actually got there, so buckle up, horror nerds, because in this video, we're going to be talking about 10 insane facts about Freddy vs. Jason that'll blow your head in the best possible way. Before we get into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to the channel. It's a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. The movie took over a decade to make. Oh, Freddy vs. Jason. The movie horror fans waited over a decade to see. It was one of the most hyped crossovers in horror history, and yet it took almost 15 years to actually hit the big screen. You see, the idea of Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees going toe-to-toe didn't come out of nowhere. After the success of 1984's A Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th in 1980, both franchises became the headliners of slasher cinema. By the time Friday the 13th Part 6 and Elm Street 3 came out in the mid to late 80s, fans and producers alike were fantasizing about pitting the two horror titans against each other. But then, there was the big issue, rights. Freddy was owned by New Line Cinema while Jason was still under Paramount Pictures, so even though the idea of a crossover floated around for years, it was stuck in limbo. Things got real in 1989. Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, bombed at the box office. Paramount was tired of Jason's machete-swinging mayhem and sold the rights to New Line Cinema, the house that Freddy built. That's when original Friday director Sean Cunningham teamed up with New Line's head of production, Michael DeLuca, to finally bring Freddy vs. Jason to life. Fans thought, this is it. Freddy vs. Jason is coming, but nope, not quite. Even though both characters now lived under the same cinematic roof, New Line quickly realized that this wouldn't be as easy as slapping them into a scene together and yelling, action. Still, Jason Goes to Hell ended with a little tease. Freddy's glove dragging Jason's hockey mask into the dirt, keeping the crossover dream alive for poor fans. But this is the part where the project became its own horror story. From 1989 to 2003, Freddy vs. Jason went through more than a dozen scripts. Writers came and went, directors signed on and then dropped out. The biggest problem was that nobody was getting the tone right. Every script was completely different and often totally insane. One had cults worshipping Freddy and Jason as gods. Another had Jason put on public trial in a full-blown media circus clearly inspired by the O.J. Simpson trial that was gripping the nation. A few tried to bring in weird sci-fi twists. It wasn't until Ronnie Yu, who had directed Bride of Chucky, came aboard in the early 2000s that the pieces really started falling into place. Yu didn't have deep ties to either franchise, which actually helped. He brought fresh eyes and focused on making the clash fun, ridiculous, and crowd-pleasing. The final script by Damian Shannon and Mark Swift found a balance. Freddy's stuck in hell and powerless, so he resurrects Jason to bring fear back to Springwood, but Jason won't stop killing, and Freddy's not having that. And boom, there you've got it. A gory, over-the-top clash. Freddy vs. Jason finally hit theaters in 2003, nearly 15 years after the idea was first seriously considered. And you know what? It slapped. Was it cheesy? Yes. Was it gory? Oh, absolutely. Was it the deepest horror movie? Not even close, but it delivered what it promised. Freddy, Jason, chaos, and blood. Fans finally got what they were waiting for. The movie crushed the box office and became the highest grossing film in either franchise at the time. And honestly, as a horror fan, I think the long delay kinda weirdly helped Freddy vs. Jason. By 2003, the golden era of slashers was already behind us and horror was starting to lean more towards psychological scares and found footage with the likes of The Ring, Saw, and Paranormal Activity. This gave Freddy vs. Jason this nostalgic, almost celebratory vibe, like one last bloody hurrah for the slasher icons of the 80s. It's kinda beautiful in its own twisted way, if you know what we mean. Rob Zombie and James Wan almost directed the film. In the late 90s, Rob Zombie, fresh off the success of his music career and dipping his toes into filmmaking, was approached by New Line Cinema to direct Freddy vs. Jason. This was before House of a Thousand Corpses, but Zombie politely declined. Not because he wasn't interested, but because he wanted to do something original, so he moved forward with House of a Thousand Corpses, which eventually became its own cult freak show. A few years later, James Wan came out with Saw in 2004. While Saw came out after Freddy vs. Jason hit theaters in 2003, there were whispers and discussions that New Line had considered Wan for Freddy vs. Jason at one point. While there's no official confirmation he was offered the film, his name was definitely on the studio's radar. But Wan, much like Rob Zombie, wasn't interested in doing a monster mash. He was more invested in telling new horrifying stories, and boy did he deliver with the Conjuring universe, Insidious, and even Malignant, which is basically his love letter to gory horror. As much as we love the final 2003 version because it's ridiculous fun, we can't lie. A Rob Zombie or James Wan directed Freddy vs. Jason would have been legendary in a totally different way. With Zombie, we would have gotten a gritty, mean, nasty gore fest. It might have alienated casual fans, but horror diehards would have certainly eaten it up. With Wan, it probably would have been smarter and creepier, a slow burn thriller with some actual fear. But the big question is, would either version have been as fun as the one we got? That's debatable. The 2003 version is loud and silly, and it leans hard into the fan service. Freddy and Jason flying through the air, impaling each other, it's an out-and-out popcorn movie with a body count. Zombie and Wan would have definitely made something artsier or weirder, but maybe not as campy. Jason recasting controversy. Oh, the Jason recasting controversy. Now, this is the kind of horror movie drama that doesn't involve blood and guts, but still left fans screaming. When Freddy vs. Jason finally hit theaters in 2003, fans were hyped. Freddy was back, Jason was back, but wait, something felt off. That wasn't the Jason we remembered. Where was the intimidating beast that had stalked his way through the last 4 Friday the 13th films? Let's rewind a bit. Kane Hodder is, for many fans, the definitive Jason Voorhees. He played the role in 4 consecutive films: Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, Jason Goes to Hell, and Jason X. Hodder brought a brutal physicality to Jason, a huge seething well of rage that didn't just kill you, but crushed you. He added subtle touches too, a deep controlled breathing, a signature head tilt, and a sense of presence that made Jason more than just a silent killer. Hodder was also a die-hard horror fan, adored by the community. He went to conventions, he loved playing Jason. He was, in many ways, Jason's soul in a hockey mask. So naturally, when Freddy vs. Jason was greenlit, fans and Kane himself assumed he'd be back. But then, out of nowhere, New Line Cinema dropped Kane Hodder and cast stuntman Ken Crazier as Jason. The horror world lost its mind. The studio cited several reasons, but the main one was this. They wanted Jason to look physically taller and more imposing next to Freddy, played of course by the returning Robert Englund. Hodder is around 6'2", and Crazier is about 6'5". That height difference supposedly helped emphasize Freddy's psychological edge and made Jason more of a towering Frankenstein-type brute. But fans weren't having it. The reaction was quick and angry. Horror forums and convention Q&As lit up with disappointment. How could New Line dump the only guy who had stuck with the role for so long? Especially when Freddy got to keep his actor, Robert Englund. Ken Crazier, a capable stuntman with previous experience as Jason's stunt double in Part 8, did his best with the role, but he lacked the mean rage that Kane brought. His Jason was slower, more robotic, more Frankenstein's monster than a predator. It worked for the tone of the movie, but it just wasn't Hodder's Jason. Personally, we feel cutting Kane Hodder was a mistake. He earned that role, not just as an actor, but as a legacy character. When you talk about Jason Voorhees in the same breath as Freddy Krueger, you're talking about 2 icons, and both should have had their long-standing actors return for the big face-off. That said, from a filmmaker's point of view, we can understand why they wanted a contrast. Freddy is wiry, sly, and verbal. Jason is mute, lumbering, and massive. So, making him more towering and inhuman visually did serve the David vs. Goliath angle, but still. The emotional edge, the fan legacy, the pain of Jason as a character, that was something only Kane Hodder knew how to wear beneath the hockey mask.
Welcome to my nightmare.
Robert Englund's final Freddy. Englund first stepped into Freddy's crispy skin in 1984 for Wes Craven's A Nightmare on Elm Street. Back then, horror villains were mostly silent stalkers, Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, but Englund changed it all. Freddy talked, Freddy taunted. Over the next 7 films, Englund owned that role. Whether Freddy was getting more horrifying or straight up cartoonish, Englund was 100% all in. And Freddy vs. Jason was Robert Englund's 8th and final time donning the fedora, striped sweater, and iconic glove. And boy did he go out swinging. In Freddy vs. Jason, he brought every ounce of that legacy to the table. The same Freddy with that classic sadistic charm, a bit more physicality, and even just a teeny dash of vulnerability we hadn't seen before. And Englund absolutely devoured it. This was a man who knew he was wrapping up a chapter and made sure Freddy's exit was unforgettable. From the very first scene of Freddy vs. Jason, Englund's Freddy is on fire. Metaphorically at first and literally later. His monologues from hell, manipulating Jason into becoming his little murder puppet and reminding everyone that even though he's stuck in damnation, his ego is fully intact. Englund absolutely chews up every second of screen time. After Freddy vs. Jason, Englund stepped away from the role. He knew the franchise would eventually get a reboot and he didn't want to be that guy clinging to the glove forever. Also, Englund was pushing 55 when the movie was released. The makeup process was grueling. The stunts were intense, and Freddy isn't exactly a low-effort performance. And so, he passed on the torch to Jackie Earle Haley in the 2010 Nightmare reboot, which, let's be honest, just didn't hit quite the same. The crossover was the last time we saw the true Freddy Krueger in his full glory, played by Englund, the man who made him an icon. Freddy vs. Jason might not be the deepest movie in the world, but it gave Robert Englund the perfect exit. It was big, ridiculous, and violent. Englund played Freddy like he knew this was the last hurrah, and he made every second count. And we think no one else has ever done it like him. That's why his Freddy is the one forever burned into our brains. Robert Englund didn't just play Freddy Krueger, he was Freddy Krueger, and Freddy vs. Jason was his last dream. One final nightmare to remember. And man, what a way to go. The final girl, Monica Keena, was afraid of Freddy in real life. You're gonna love this, because behind all the dream world chaos and machete swinging mayhem of Freddy vs. Jason, there's a little slice of real life fear that makes the whole thing even more delicious. Turns out, Monica Keena, who plays Laurie Campbell, the film's final girl, wasn't just pretending to be afraid of Freddy Krueger on screen. She was genuinely terrified of him in real life, and honestly, same Monica, same. Monica Keena admitted that she was legitimately afraid of Freddy Krueger, especially when Robert Englund was in full costume and makeup. She found Freddy's look so disturbing, the burns, the claws, the eyes, the voice, that she couldn't separate the actor from the character. Even though she knew it was just makeup, something about that presence freaked her out so badly that she kept her distance between takes. Now, some might call it a blessing in disguise. After all, fear is a huge part of horror acting, and if the terror is genuine, that's gold on camera. It seems Keena wasn't acting when she looked freaked out, it was legit. Freddy wasn't just a monster in the movie, he was a walking anxiety trigger for Keena in real life, and that's kind of brilliant when you think about it. Freddy Krueger's powers come from fear. The more scared you are of him, the stronger he gets. So, Keena's legit fear fed the performance in the best way possible, and honestly, can you blame her? Freddy haunts your dreams, he gets inside your head, and there's something especially violating about that. So, next time you re-watch Freddy vs. Jason, keep an eye on Monica Keena's reactions. Watch the way she looks at Freddy in those close-ups, the way her breathing shifts, the way she subtly pulls away. That's not just Laurie Campbell trying to stay alive, that's Monica Keena, the actress, doing everything she can not to scream in real life. Issues with makeup. Freddy vs. Jason wasn't just a fight between two horror titans, it was a war waged in the makeup trailer long before the cameras ever rolled. While audiences were cheering on machete swings and dream world carnage, behind the scenes, the real horror story was the makeup process, uncomfortable, brutal, and at times, downright torturous for the actors who brought these monsters to life. Now, Robert Englund had been through this rodeo before. The Freddy look, that gnarly burn-scarred flesh, wasn't just movie magic, It was prosthetics, paint, and a lot of patience. For Freddy vs. Jason, the process of transforming England into the Dream Demon took roughly 4 hours every single day. That meant he had to show up on set earlier than anyone, sit perfectly still in a makeup chair while layers of latex were glued to his face and neck, and then have it all airbrushed and blended with meticulous detail to give that realistic charred look we all recognize immediately. And the fun didn't stop there. After 4 hours of becoming Freddy, England had to wear that makeup for another 12 to 16 hours, shooting in high heat, thick fog, heavy lighting, or worse, rain. The prosthetics would sweat, peel, or shift during action scenes, especially when Freddy was brawling. And let's not forget the iconic glove. That thing may look slick on screen, but it's clunky, heavy, and a pain in the wrist. England had to act, emote, and fight, all while dragging it around. Now, if we talk about Jason Voorhees, things didn't get any comfier for him. Ken Crazier, who took on the role of Jason for this film, was literally buried alive in makeup and wardrobe. Jason's design in Freddy vs. Jason was meant to emphasize that he was basically a walking corpse, this hulking, waterlogged monster who's been through hell and space if we're counting Jason X. That meant prosthetic face molds, neck appliances, and full-body grime. And then came the many, many layers. Decaying clothing, heavy boots, soggy padding, and that damn hockey mask. The mask is iconic, sure, but wearing it? Whole different game. The heat would build up inside it within minutes. His breath would fog it up, and with limited visibility through the eye holes, Crazier often had to swing weapons and stomp through complex sets nearly blind. It's a miracle he didn't accidentally machete a cameraman. Look, it's easy to watch a movie like Freddy vs. Jason and enjoy the over-the-top fun of it all, but when you realize what went into making these guys look right, the hours in the chair, the sweat, the heat, the discomfort, you get a whole new appreciation for what's happening under the mask. Honestly, huge respect for the makeup and special effects crew on this film. They had to juggle two iconic horror villains, each with complex prosthetics. There were constant challenges. Prosthetics falling off during scenes, appliances needing emergency repairs, makeup getting wrecked by rain and sweat, and through it all, they kept Freddy and Jason looking flawless, or, well, delightfully disgusting. The lake was used in X-Men 2. Alright, horror fans, you remember the lake in the climax of Freddy vs. Jason? That's the same lake used in X-Men 2. Yup, the very body of water that witnessed Jason Voorhees slicing and dicing his way through teens in a rage also doubled as the serene, tragic backdrop for Jean Grey's sacrifice. If that's not the most bizarre multiverse twist, we don't know what is. Both Freddy vs. Jason and X-Men 2 released in 2003, both shot in British Columbia, Canada. Specifically, the lake in question is Bunsen Lake near Vancouver. It's been a go-to location for filmmakers looking for that perfect, eerie, atmospheric water setting that can either say, let's go skinny dipping and die, or time for a heroic, emotional send-off. In Freddy vs. Jason, the final act unfolds on this lake, a return to Camp Crystal Lake, the birthplace of Jason's trauma and the ultimate setting for his last stand. It's where the film explodes, almost literally, into pure chaos. Docks get obliterated, and Freddy and Jason beat the living hell out of each other. Surrounded by misty woods, wide open water, and with just the right eerie ambiance, Bunsen Lake just feels like the right place for Freddy to get decapitated and Jason to go full monster mode. Now let's talk about X-Men 2, which was released just a few months before Freddy vs. Jason. You'll recognize that very same lake, this time playing the role of Alkali Lake, the remote location where the Weapon X project did its horrifying work and where Jean Grey famously meets her temporary end. The X-Men's jet is trying to escape, but water is surging around them. Jean Grey steps out, uses her powers to hold back the flood and lift the jet. And then, in true self-sacrificing superhero fashion, she lets the water consume her. It's tragic and it's beautiful. Honestly, when we first learned that Freddy vs. Jason and X-Men 2 shared a lake, our brains nearly short-circuited. Like what? You could literally re-edit both movies together and make it look like Jason's fight caused the flood that Jean had to fix. Freddy vs. Jean Grey, dawn of telekinetic slashers, anyone? It also adds this weird meta layer to the films. Like in Freddy vs. Jason, the lake represents death, rage, and revenge. In X-Men 2, that same lake becomes a symbol of sacrifice, rebirth, and evolution. Same setting, totally different meaning.
Dark meat.
No!
They had decided on a Clue-style ending. Freddy vs. Jason could have had an ending that was so different, it might have left fans picking their jaws up off the theater floor. Yup, the creators once toyed with a Clue-style alternate ending setup. Yes, that's right, like the 1985 murder mystery comedy Clue, where the movie didn't have just one ending, but multiple. Crazy, right? But also kind of genius. For those unfamiliar, Clue famously had 3 different endings, with theaters showing different versions or sometimes playing all 3 in a row, complete with title cards like, "That's how it could have happened, but what if?" It was cheeky and very on brand for a murder mystery farce. Now, apply that same logic to Freddy vs. Jason, but in a messy slasher context. Instead of one definitive ending where Jason walks out of the lake holding Freddy's severed head, which, for the record, is awesome, the filmmakers flirted with multiple alternate endings, each showing a different outcome to the final battle. Think about it. You'd go to see the movie in Theater A and Freddy wins. Your friend watches it in Theater B and Jason wins. In another theater, both lose and Laurie and Will find a way to trap them both in limbo or banish them for good. In another, they both win, cut to hell, where Pinhead walks in and says, "Gentlemen." And yes, that Pinhead cameo was actually considered, which we'll talk about next because that's huge. This was seriously discussed. New Line Cinema liked the idea because they knew the fan base was deeply divided. Team Freddy, Team Jason. So why not have multiple outcomes so everyone gets their own canon ending? No announcement, no warning, just randomly, here's your ending. Now go argue with your friends. Think what the Reddit threads would have looked like, the YouTube breakdowns, the Twitter wars. While the concept had fans drooling, it ultimately got scrapped because logistics, hello. Pulling off a Clue-style rollout in 2003 would have been a budget-eating monster of its own. Distributing different endings to different theaters wasn't as easy as pushing a digital file back then. This was still in the age of reels and physical prints. You'd need to create multiple final cuts, print them all, organize which theaters got which version, and somehow keep that all a secret. That's a lot of effort and money, especially for a horror movie, even a big crossover like this. Plus, the studio was probably worried about audience confusion. If word got out that there were different endings, people might assume they were being pranked, or worse, some fans might think their ending was wrong. Also, adding multiple endings would have left no definitive answer to the age-old question, who wins? So ultimately, they just dropped the idea. Okay, let's just say it, the Clue-style ending would have been a riot. Imagine sitting in the theater and seeing Jason walk out victorious, only for the screen to cut to, "But what if Freddy had won instead?" Sure, it might have been tonally risky, but this was already a movie where a dream demon and a zombie in a hockey mask play whack-a-mole with each other. That's not a movie even attempting to be subtle. It isn't afraid of being absurd, so why not totally commit to it? However, the final ending we got is still a banger. It keeps both slashers alive, sort of, but the Clue-style ending idea? That would have been next-level fanbait. We almost saw Pinhead and Ash make an appearance. Now, this is the kind of horror crossover gossip that keeps fans up at night. Believe it or not, we almost got an appearance from Pinhead of Hellraiser and Ashley J. Williams from Evil Dead in Freddy vs. Jason. And if that had actually happened, one dream demon, one undead machete machine, one chainsaw-wielding wisecracker, and one sadomasochistic priest of pain. It would have turned a horror icon battle into a full-blown slasher cinematic universe. So let's rewind to the early 2000s when Freddy vs. Jason was in development hell and studio execs were tossing every insane idea at the wall to see what stuck. The movie had taken over a decade to get made, and by the time it finally picked up steam, there was this hunger to make it even bigger than just Freddy and Jason. The original ending that circulated in the script drafts was way darker, way more out there, and involved hell, literally. In one version, after Freddy and Jason tear each other apart at Crystal Lake, both are dragged to the underworld. The screen goes dark, chains slither out of the shadows, and then you hear it. Doug Bradley's chilling voice says, "Gentlemen, what seems to be the problem?" There, they're greeted by none other than Pinhead, the leather-clad Cenobite of pain from Hellraiser. Cut to black, cue the credits. It was short, it was simple, but it was perfect. The idea was to tease a sequel where Pinhead would serve as the third villain, possibly even the referee of their next clash. Freddy vs. Jason vs. Pinhead was on the table, baby, but what happened? In a word, rights. Freddy and Jason were both under New Line Cinema's umbrella by that point, but Pinhead was still a Clive Barker creation controlled by Dimension Films. Getting the rights to use him, even for a cameo, would have required a deal. The studios couldn't come to terms, and the idea was scrapped. But that wasn't the only big name who was nearly dragged into the Freddy Jason world. Yes, Bruce Campbell's Ash Williams, the shotgun-slinging, dead-eyed killing legend from Evil Dead, was seriously considered for a sequel to Freddy vs. Jason. There were full conversations about turning the franchise into a trilogy, Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash. The idea was to introduce Ash as the reluctant hero caught between the two monsters. He would have probably discovered the Necronomicon as the source of Freddy and Jason's resurrection and used it to fight them both. It would have been magic. But again, the rights got messy. Evil Dead was under a completely different company and deals couldn't be made in time. Bruce Campbell, while interested, was hesitant. He didn't want Ash to become a background character in a Freddy and Jason brawl. He wanted a script where Ash had personality and actually had a shot at winning. Fair enough. Well, that deal fell apart and the movie never happened. There is a silver lining. We did get this fight in the comics. The 2007 comic book miniseries, Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash, is absolutely as insane as you'd hope. Ash fights both killers after the Necronomicon brings Freddy back from the dead. It's violent, bloody, and glorious. It's exactly what we needed. But let's be honest, had Pinhead and Ash appeared in Freddy vs. Jason, we'd still be talking about it like the horror version of Avengers Endgame, which honestly we were robbed of. However, we still hold out hope. Give us a multiverse slasher movie. Give me the Dream Warriors of the multiverse. Give me Ash, Freddy, Jason, and Pinhead fighting in the cabin in the woods, fighting over the Necronomicon like it's the last PS5 on Earth. Let's be honest, we all want to see that movie.
Oh, scary.
The director thinks Freddy won in the end. In the end, we all see Jason walk out of Crystal Lake holding Freddy's severed head, but then Freddy winks at the audience. So who really won? Fans have been debating that question for 2 decades, but you know who had a very clear answer? The director himself. That's right, Ronnie Yu has gone on the record saying he believes Freddy actually won, and oh boy, that changes everything. Let's recap what actually happened in the film's final moments. After an absolutely violent final battle at Camp Crystal Lake, including exploding propane tanks, a flaming Jason, a screaming final girl, and lots of slow-mo, Jason emerges from the water, dragging Freddy's decapitated head with one hand. But just before the screen fades to black, Freddy's head winks at the camera. Cut to credits. Now, to the average viewer, that ending screams that no one really won. Nobody wants to watch their favorite killer get permanently deaded, but Ronnie Yu, the man in the director's chair, had a very specific idea in mind and he wasn't subtle about his thoughts. In interviews, he clearly stated that Freddy was the real winner. From Yu's perspective, it all comes down to one thing: control. Sure, Jason physically won the fight, but Freddy is never truly dead because he exists in dreams, ideas, and fears. A little thing like decapitation just doesn't slow him down. You can't kill a dream with a machete. Even after Jason walks away victorious, Freddy is still very much conscious. Okay, full honesty, we kinda dig Yu's interpretation. It's a little unexpected and it lines up perfectly with Freddy's character. Sure, Jason walked away with the W, but Freddy's whole shtick is that you can't ever truly get rid of him. You can bury Jason, you can drown Jason, you can blow Jason into space dust. Remember Jason X? We do, unfortunately. But Freddy is more of an idea, a boogeyman built on fear. Plus, let's not forget that Freddy was technically controlling Jason for most of the movie. He literally resurrected Jason and sent him to Springwood to terrify teens. He was the puppet master until Jason figured things out and turned on him. But even then, Freddy adapted, fought back, and still survived a decapitation with style and flair. Also, Jason is predictable. You know what you're getting. If you're near the woods and you hear you're already dead. But Freddy can be anything, go anywhere. That wink wasn't just a gotcha moment, it was Freddy letting us know that even when he loses, he's still in your head, still whispering in your dreams. Also, it's a great way to let both fan bases walk away satisfied, or at least ready to argue at the next horror con. Freddy lives, Jason walks, no one's really dead. Sounds like it's time for a sequel to Us. Marvelous verdict! Alright, let's wrap this one up properly. So yeah, Freddy vs. Jason wasn't just a horror crossover, it was a full madhouse of weird decisions, scrapped ideas, and I can't believe that actually happened moments. Honestly, the more you dig, the more it feels like this film was held together by duct tape, nightmares, and pure 2000s chaos energy. So whether you're here for the horror, the humor, or just love watching two slasher legends duke it out, this movie's legacy is way messier and more fun than you thought. Freddy vs. Jason is bloody, loud, and slightly ridiculous mayhem, and we wouldn't have it any other way. That's all we got for you this time, but if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.